Obviously, Jeremy, you're taking over a large-scale workforce here at Zillow, headquartered in Seattle, but under Rich's post-COVID or coming out of COVID world, really made a big shift into remote work.
Yeah. Well, I'll correct one thing you said. We are not headquartered in Seattle. We are headquartered in the cloud, John.
Oh, boy. Come on.
And we're doing this interview in the cloud.
All right.
Cloud HQ.
Cloud-based Zillow.
Yeah,
Cloud reported today. That is not going to be AP style and GeekWire for the description. Okay.
That's fine.
Tried.
So
I
that's
pushed.
what we do it internally.
Okay.
We call it Cloud HQ.
I don't know. I'm too old school. I don't think I can get there. But
Fair enough.
Welcome to GeekWire. I'm GeekWire co-founder Todd Bishop.
And I'm GeekWire co-founder John Cook.
We are coming to you from Seattle, where we get to report each day on what's happening around us in business, technology, science, startups, and innovation. What happens here matters everywhere, and every week on this show, we get to talk about some of the most interesting stories and trends in the news. Today, we got a breaking story. This just in. Big transition at Zillow. Rich Barton, the co-founder and longtime CEO of Zillow, is moving into a new position as co-executive chairman. We'll make sure Lloyd hears it right. Yeah. And Zillow Group's new CEO is Jeremy Wacksman, who has been the company's COO up until this point. And lo and behold, we have Rich and Jeremy here on the show with us today. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much, Todd and John. Good to see you guys. I feel like I'm sort of a silent co-founder of GeekWire too. I mean, I feel that connected to you guys. I remember when you were just getting started out, when that whole thing happened with the split, and then you started out GeekWire. Anyway, our history of Zillow kind of tracks the history of GeekWire, so we are connected.
I was going to say, is it codified into the Zillow Group corporate bylaws that John Cook has to be there covering every significant milestone of this company?
Yes.
We love
Yes.
that. We love that.
Well, start us off by explaining the news from today. I just gave you a little thumbnail sketch to folks, but Rich and Jeremy, what's happening at Zillow? Why is it happening? And where do you go from here? And by the way, Zillow Group, I need to be clear. We're talking about Zillow Group here, the larger corporate entity.
That's right. That's right. We kind of shorthand that Zillow, Todd. So we may just say Zillow, and we mean Zillow Group as well. But the news is really exciting. The news today is that we are promoting Jeremy, who those of you who are watching can see right there, to Chief Executive Officer after having organized most of the company around him, underneath him, 3 years ago in kind of preparation for this moment. We did that in order to establish the kind of new post-COVID strategy for Zillow in terms of trying to go from being a search and find real estate site, where we've been investing strategically in digitizing the transaction itself and helping people move. And so as we came out of COVID, we've been investing in all of those areas. The strategy is working really well. The business is in great shape. The top line is growing nicely. The profits are growing nicely. The outlook is good. So the sun is out, and that is the time to make these kinds of moves. I couldn't be more excited by what's going on. You're going to ask probably why Jeremy, and then I'll let him speak. But Jeremy has been with the company for 15 years. He's had most every job at the company as he's moved up through the ranks. Like so many of us at Zillow, he came out of Microsoft. And he's this wonderful combination of being an engineer by degree, but he also has an MBA. So he understands this kind of technical product strategy. He kind of put the leadership team together that's in place right now 3 years ago, and they've executed well. And so now is the time.
Yeah, Jeremy, tell us about your new role, whether you're going to be shaking things up. Now that Rich is out the door, let's get the real scoop on what's going to be happening at Zillow in the coming years.
Thanks, Rich. Now everything changes. No, I kid. No, I mean, the honest truth is, as Rich said, we have been building towards and planning for this the last few years. And so from an employee standpoint, we don't expect too much to change. As Rich talked about, we've been on this strategy shift and growth into the transaction, right? turning from an advertising company into more of a transaction company really since COVID. And that's really starting to work. And we organized a company around it. So we built and we really reorganized the company 2 or 3 years ago to really integrate. And this housing super app we talk about, trying to deliver this integrated move for a buyer and seller, that made us have to reorganize internally. And so we put a lot of things together. We broke down a lot of walls. We created a lot of functional centers of excellence. We elevated a bunch of leaders, and that's all working really well. So from an employee standpoint, the message is actually not much is changing. And this is a reflection that things are working and that we're excited to now continue to grow and continue to deliver against what we've been doing, which is, I think, the result of the last couple of years of hard work during what's been a really challenging macro environment. So we've done all this great work. The team has done all these great things in spite of, housing being at a trough and rates being really high and it being a really tough mortgage environment, all these things. Like, the company has done a fantastic job through all that. And so we're really excited now to be able to really accelerate and continue to grow from here.
Now, you're touching on some of these things as you're going, but just for people who might not have been following Zillow over the past few years as a business, obviously you define yourselves as a media and technology company for the real estate industry, for the residential real estate industry. Can you give us a thumbnail sketch, either of you, of where the company is today and how that compares to where you were a few years ago, the key trends shaping Zillow now in terms of AI and trends in the industry? I know that's a lot, but if you could just give us a thumbnail sketch to catch everybody up.
Yeah, absolutely. Many of your readers, I'm sure every of your readers and your listeners know Zillow, and you know us, and you browse us probably while you're walking your dog and probably while you're casually shopping. 2/3 of America effectively is on Zillow every month, right? In some fashion, whether you're dreaming, whether you're shopping, whether you're wish casting, whether you're Zillow gone wilding, right? What most people don't know is that we've slowly started to build a transaction business to turn more of those shoppers into actual buyers and sellers, right? The first decade plus of the company, maybe almost 2 decades of the company, was an advertising business. It was connect those buyers, renters, and sellers with great professionals. And they bought advertising. And as soon as we made that marriage happen, we were out. And we said, good luck. I hope you have a good experience. I hope the folks that were paying us, serve you well. And what we realized in doing all that was, while we innovated and really turned on the lights in dreaming and shopping, the actual transaction process was still very, very broken. And the stat I will always remember is we did a survey of recent buyers and sellers, and 1/3 of folks cried during the process. And that number was like consistent. It was consistently 1/3 of people broke down in tears during this part-time job of trying to buy a house or sell a house. And so we looked at that snarl of the transaction and said, well, that's really where the consumer empowerment lies. If we can make buying and selling a house easier, if we can make it more delightful, more transparent, more like the other apps on your phone, that's really the opportunity for us as a brand. And we looked at our data and said, okay, we have all this audience, we have all this great potential energy of consumers, but we're really only helping a few percentage points of them actually move. Are they actually using one of our agents? Are they actually using one of our mortgage providers? And so that was the strategy shift we made a few years ago. We said, wow, our goal should be help more of our own customers who love our brand actually get the home, actually buy it, actually get the financing, actually get the great agent to get the transaction done. So that was the shift. It's still small as a part of our business, but it's what's now driving our growth. And we've built a lot of things around all the things I just said. Many people probably don't know we originate mortgages. We have Zillow Home Loans that does hundreds and growing mortgages a month for consumers that work with our agent partners. We have handpicked a set of great agent partners in a bunch of markets where we're building this integrated experience. And we've said, hey, we're going to align ourselves with you. We're a big part of your business. You're a big part of our business. And we share success. We only make money if you actually help the person buy the home. So we've done a lot of things to really transition from what was more of a Google-like advertising model to more of an Amazon-like transaction model. And of course, it's still very early days. That's still a small part of our total company, but that is the growth part of our company. And that's what's yielding a lot of the growth you see today.
We'll be right back.
I wanted to jump into the succession planning here and how this all occurred. And I'm just fascinated. As Rich mentioned, I'm kind of the unofficial historian of Zillow here. And so I've watched Rich and his team grow the company here through many of his Bartonisms, which have stuck with me over the years, including at many GeekWire events where You've said things like, it's just as easy to get up to the plate and bunt as it is to swing for a home run. Of course, power to the people, which is very well known, and kill the squirrel. So there are all these business maxims that I've picked up.
Kill the squirrel.
Kill the squirrel. Yeah, don't veer off course. Just run the thing over.
Stay on target.
Stay on target.
Yeah, I think that's from Rich's dad, if I recall correctly.
It is.
Yeah. So, Jeremy, what of those business maxims have you taken away from Rich over the years, and what are your own principles and style that how you're gonna put your stamp on Zillow?
I don't know that you can match a Rich Barton quip. I think the stay on target, which is a different version of kill the squirrel, is something we talk about a lot internally, and it's something that I think has shaped not just me, but a lot of the leadership team that has been here. It's not just Rich, Lloyd, and I. I mean, our leadership team is incredibly tenured. And has been through the last many years with us together. And if you think about the last few years, we've been through a lot. I mean, we went through business model shift. We went through COVID, and COVID was kind of two sides. We went through, the tech boom and slowdown. We went through rising rates. We're now in a housing trough. So the team has been through a lot of macro challenges and has stayed focused. And that's been a mantra internally, has been, control what we can control. We can't control the weather, right? And we can grow and take share. Even there were years where the market was shrinking 20%. And we were shrinking, but we were shrinking less than the market. So we were saying, well, that's great. We're growing relative to the market, even though the whole thing is so cloudy right now. So for me, a big mantra of kind of stay focused and stay on target, especially in a world not just when things are cloudy and you're kind of circling the wagons, but then when things get excited and you could actually chase a million things and you get asked, why don't we go over here? And why don't we go over there? And we only have so many things to do. So the take big swings and the stay focused, to me, kind of are similar messages. It's like, which swings do you prioritize? And then making sure you stay aligned on the consumer. Those to me they're mantras that I think Rich and Lloyd instilled in the company from its founding. And it's a big part of our culture today. And it's a big part of our culture that will remain and sustain as we grow.
Rich, let me flip it. Is there anything from Jeremy that you've taken away in his leadership style?
Yeah, Jeremy it may not be obvious yet, but as you get to know him, I mean, he is a fiercely competitive fellow, which is kind of a core value at Zillow. Fiercely competitive. He is, I mean, if Lloyd were here with us, Lloyd would be telling stories about how Jeremy is a rare, I would call it product strategist, product and competitive strategist. And for better or for worse, that is kind of it's how Lloyd and I fancy ourselves. It is kind of how we were raised at Microsoft, kind of in the geek mold. And in a very fast-moving technology environment, having a real product strategist in the seat on the deck with his hands on the wheel, his or her hands on the wheel, is comforting. I think Lloyd would probably say, I'm good, but Jeremy's even better. And so he really sets a mean tone. Now, at the same time, he has a really broad spectrum of interests and skills. And so in the next phase of Zillow, we're going to have to take all this great technology that we have built and are building and multiply its impact through a giant go-to-market partner network that we push our software through in order to get to consumers to change the way they buy and sell, and to make this really magical transaction. And so the skills required there are a different set of skills, and that will be the kind of 10x scaling challenge that Jeremy and his leadership team will face. And he's putting that team together that's going to make that right.
That's what makes this industry so fun too, is, I mean, yes, Rich, Lloyd, myself, Matt, a lot of our team comes from engineering and product backgrounds, but this category needs software and it needs people. And Zillow has learned a lot of those lessons over 20 years where we've tried to rush some innovation out and just be like, well, the tech is so good, it'll just solve the problem. And you have to get the great professionals in this industry to help work with it. And it's maybe taken us a while to get there, but it's part of why we're so excited about not just, we talk a lot about the consumer stuff, and the consumer stuff is super fun and sexy and exciting, but it is really the like software for the professionals too. That is a growing part of our business that gets people excited. And I mean, to Rich's point, we all fancy ourselves product and technology folks, and we tell our industry partners we do software so you can do real estate. And that's a big part of our mantra.
And for folks who are out there following along, Lloyd is Lloyd Frink, who is the other co-founder of Zillow and the other co-executive chairman now.
Yes,
right.
Yes. He's a little microphone shy, but when you get him in private, he's quite outspoken.
Yeah, we've had him on the podcast before for your 10th anniversary, actually.
That's right.
And we had Lloyd, Rich, and at the time, Spencer Raskoff, who was serving as CEO. So he has made an appearance on the GeekWire podcast once before. I think it was the one time we dragged him out was for the 10th anniversary.
All right, we'll talk about an anniversary reprisal.
We'll get
good, as I recall.
Get back at the 20th, yeah. So speaking of succession planning, and Spencer, Rich, you've been through this before. You actually handed the reins off to Spencer Raskoff as CEO in 2010. So this is your second time of going through the CEO succession planning. I'm just curious what you've learned from the past and what's different this time around.
Yeah, I mean, our past succession plans have gone really well. You know, we've when Spencer took over, it was well signaled, it was well planned. Nobody internally or externally should have been surprised. I would say that is the most important thing as you do these things. You don't actually want to surprise anybody. You want the transition to be quite smooth and well signaled. And so when we reorganized the company a few years ago under Jeremy as COO, literally the large majority of the employees of the company all worked for Jeremy at that point. That's a strong signal. I only had a few other direct reports who Jeremy now is taking over. That's a very strong signal. About 7 or 8 quarters ago, Jeremy, I don't know, we basically said, all right, Jeremy's got to become known in the investment community. And so he'd always occasionally done an investment conference, but our CFO and I invited Jeremy onto the quarterly conference call, which is an important communication point, as you guys know, for the investment community. And gradually over those 8 quarters, Jeremy Wacksman took up more and more of the airtime in the conference call. And so I guess the big takeaway, as we've been through this before, is a well-planned, well-signaled transition plan is one that works. It's especially awesome when it's just so obviously the right choice to everybody as well.
So, Rich, I will have to just contrast with the presidential situation where maybe that's not the ideal succession planning, because I don't think that's what happened with the Biden handoff to Kamala Harris, if I'm correct here.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. I don't have too much inside knowledge about that.
There definitely weren't 8 earnings calls to plan through.
No, exactly right.
You know, there's so many examples of bad succession planning. I was going to ask you, just to make a Howard Schultz joke, whether we could expect you to be on LinkedIn in 6 months commenting on Jeremy's performance.
No, that will never happen. I can't believe he was doing that. Wow, what a bad decision. But no. And I got nothing else going on. I'm not starting anything else. You won't see any, mysterious web pages from me saying I'm interested in a little revolution. Come join Barton and Frink. That's not that. Do you remember when that happened? Do you remember that first article you wrote, John?
Yeah.
Yeah. When we launched Zillow, this is an interesting story maybe for your listeners. When we launched Zillow, we didn't tell anybody what we were doing.
Yep.
And we had a little bit of a reputation because Lloyd and I had done Expedia. And so we were well known. So we put up a web page that I built in WordPress, I think, or maybe in the Microsoft Word tool, whatever, a really ugly web page. And all it said is, Rich Barton and Lloyd Frink are doing something new. Are you looking for a little revolution? Click here to apply for a job. And even when people went through the interviews, we didn't tell them what we were doing. Of course, the mystery generated all kinds of interest. It worked very well for us, including John Cook's interest.
I think I was pre that web page. I want to at least make that claim that I found out about you two doing it before the web page existed. So
I think you're right.
Your
and
investigative journalistic cred predates
Yes,
the shadow.
And you published a mysterious article. Like, what are they doing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely.
Anyway, that worked. But the reason I'm telling that story is that's not me. I have my dance card is full, and I'm going to be really happy as a co-exec chair and doing the other boards that I'm involved with, and pulling back from all the day-to-day operations, with my primary job being to support Jeremy Wacksman and the leadership team.
So you talked about productizing Zillow and pushing it out. It reminded me a little bit of Microsoft in many ways, with like a Steve Ballmer character coming in to really push the channel to really sell
That's
the
a really
product.
Who's who? And oh my goodness,
I don't know. I was bringing it up because of their Microsoft connections here.
Yeah, Jeremy's got such a full head of hair, both these guys. I don't think you can do that.
Well, we're also not done building. I mean, that's the other, we talk about the operational need, but the innovation machine is not done here. I mean, we talked about that transaction snarl. Like, we got a lot of software we got to go build. We got a lot of innovation we got to go do. And you brought up AI. I mean, we're just scratching the surface on the next wave, right? I mean, I came here during the mobile wave. I got here, I had worked at Xbox and briefly on Microsoft's consumer mobile efforts. And so when I got to Zillow, we had just launched our iPhone app. I think we had kind of done it even before the App Store. And we kind of realized mobile was going to be big. And so they looked around, they were like, well, who knows anything about mobile? Well, you worked on mobile for like a month. Like, you should go figure this out. And that led to our mobile smartphone strategy, our iPad strategy. So that wave was fantastic. And we can spend a lot of time going down memory lane on that. But we're at the dawn of another one now.
Do you remember when the Apple people showed up delivering the prototype iPad with
that's right. Yes.
The steel case.
Have we ever told that story? Are we allowed to tell
Let's hear it.
You guys know that story?
No, let's hear it.
Tell it, Wax.
So we did the iPhone app, and we were a tiny company, and we did it. We actually dressed up like Steve Jobs and took a picture to try and get his attention on the iPhone, and it must have worked because we had a great app. And I mean, real estate is just tailor-made for the phone. If you think back in the day, you actually couldn't use location, right? Zillow, before I got here, was a search engine on your desktop, and it had no sense of location. All of a sudden you could do around me, right? That was like the killer use case, was walk around your neighborhood. And so the iPad was rumored to be coming out. If you remember, like back then, no one knew if there was going to be this device. Is it going to happen? And Apple called and was like, hey, we want you to do a launch app for the iPad, which of course, yes, how can we help? What can we do? But that came with them shipping us a device, which we're like, okay, great. And there were all these requirements for the device. And it turned into, no, you have to have a locked room with a key code, and only like so many people can have access. We have to have the names of the people. And then when they showed up, it was like in a briefcase chained to a guy's wrist. And he had to like install it in the room and verify the security and the whole deal. So for the entire time building it, like 4 people knew about the iPad app, even internally, because we couldn't violate our NDA with, and our privacy with Apple. We had to tell them, here are the 4 people that know. And that was it. And so that was the iPad launch story. And then it turned out like Steve actually demoed it on stage. That was one of our early startup highlights, was getting this, we're still a very small company back then. And you've got our name and our brand up there when they're unveiling the new device. That was a home run for us.
So you've been through these multiple tech revolutions, the web at Expedia, Rich and Lloyd, and mobile. Obviously, Jeremy, you were heavily involved in that at Zillow. How does AI compare, and where are you headed in AI?
I think it has the potential to be even bigger. Like, I think we have and you're hearing that a lot, right? That this platform shift is kind of industrial revolution size. I think what we have to work out is sort of how long does that take? Like any hype cycle, we run at it, and then the reality of how long the innovation is going to set in takes a little while. But if you just look at the capabilities and the potential and the early use cases of what's come out, it's hard not to get excited about its ability to rewire everything. And, like everything at Zillow, we ran at mobile and we're running at AI. And we have a bunch of great teams doing kind of like level 1, as our AI leader calls it, innovations, like less disruptive. Can we kind of have our loan officers do more co-pilot things? Can we do transcription and translation and task suggestion, like great automation workflow stuff? And we have AI teams working on more kind of disruptive stuff. Can we do stuff that like more fully automates things or generates things? And you see that in some of our 3D tech. Many of the listeners probably don't know, but we've built this great, it's homegrown 3D And it really is machine learning AI technology to generate these super listings. We call them showcase listings. And that is go use the latest iPhone or a 3D camera and just take a bunch of panos. And then AI and machine learning will stitch a virtual walkthrough together, will generate a floor plan and drop the photos on it and tell you where you are in the room. And it just gives you this incredible immersive shopping experience that you cannot get from like a traditional listing. That's all AI powered. And so, we're running at, whether it's generative or not, a bunch of different AI innovations. We are, I think, as excited about this platform as we were about mobile. I think time frame is a question for sure. And that's definitely the question in the media right now as well.
But Jeremy, I know you've said publicly that you don't believe chatbots will replace agents.
Yep.
Why not?
I just think it's just like the internet. It elevates the profession and it takes away the work and the busy work and the things people don't want to do. The real challenge with buying and selling a house is you do it once every, used to be 7 years, now it's 10 years. And it's the biggest check you ever write financially. And so it's really hard to imagine that you don't have a professional help you make the right decision, provide guidance, provide advice, provide negotiation. What I think AI has the power to do is take even more of the busy work and of the process work out of the picture, right? If you go talk to our agent partners and ask them how much time do they spend actually doing client service and how much time do they actually spend, in the back room, in the busy work, in the paperwork, in the management work, they're going to tell you way too much on the latter. And I think AI, even more than some of the technology automation today, can pull a lot of that away because it can be this co-pilot effectively for a great professional.
Rich, what are your feelings
about AI?
Yeah. You don't think it's going anywhere?
Oh, it ain't going anywhere. It's going to the.
As a contrast to Jeremy. Yeah.
Oh no! It's going to the moon. It's I guess your audience is more sophisticated, but this debate continues about AI good or evil. Superman or Terminator. I'm firmly in the Superman camp. I believe this is just the next exciting evolution of us kind of blending with our technology and becoming superhuman. I really do. And so I'm incredibly excited about it. I guess I would shorthand what Jeremy's saying is the most interesting traction we're getting from it right now is a lot of the boiler room stuff. Yeah. Okay. And which is fantastic. We've been innovating really hard on the kind of out front user interface stuff as well, but we haven't discovered a magic bullet there yet. Nor have I seen anyone else who has a magic bullet there other than kind of the OpenAI, ChatGPT and its competitors, the search replacement or search different form of search, chat search. We haven't really seen anything really break through there yet, but I'm 100% certain we will.
Now, in many ways, the Zestimate, which was Zillow's original innovation, was early forms of AI, machine learning, figuring out automatically how much a home was valued at. Do you see new forms of AI, generative AI, foundation models coming in and overhauling the Zestimate, allowing it to do more, or perhaps making it even more accurate?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't stop in 2006, and I mean, that was the provocative product, but it was also narrowly covered. I think it was half homes in the country, and it had a pretty wide error rate. I think the average error rate was 8% maybe nationwide for the homes we actually valued. Now, today, you fast forward and we're valuing more than 100 million homes, and I think our on-market error rate's under 2%. There's still an error rate. That means, I talk to people all the time where our estimate's not right because we don't have great data or it's an edge case in the model. That's going to happen. I think, yes, our latest AI model, we actually call neural Zestimate, which is it's not generative AI, but it's a neural network based approach that was put in place to get even more accurate and use even models of models to get even more accurate. And the ability for generative AI and the advances in the AI platforms to go even further, that team is really, really excited about. Back to Rich's point on where are the use cases today. I think the other thing to think about is just the pace of innovation. There's a lot of pattern matching people are doing from PC, internet, mobile, AI, but those prior generations, they were kind of annual cycles of innovation. And Gen AI is like a weekly cycle or sometimes a daily cycle of innovation. And the capital that's flowing into it to drive those innovations is 10 or 100x what it was in the other cycles. And it's not, it's not tied up in 2 or 3 companies. So the rate of change to us, I think, is the most exciting thing here. What we're talking about on this podcast today is going to be stale a month from now. And there'll be something else out there that a team is running at. And I think that can be exhausting, I think, for employees and consumers and users, but I think that can also be exciting. And that's what, that's where you have to just lean in and continue to try new things, and not everything's going to work.
We'll be right back.
Just wanted to switch gears out of AI for a bit to the workforce. Obviously, Jeremy, you're taking over a large-scale workforce here at Zillow, headquartered in Seattle, but under Rich's kind of post-COVID or coming out of COVID world, really made a big shift into remote work, in contrast to a lot of other companies, large technology companies. So I'm curious where you stand on remote work versus in person.
Yeah, well, I'll correct one thing you said. We are not headquartered in Seattle. We are headquartered in the cloud, John.
Oh boy, come on.
And we're doing this interview in the cloud.
All right,
Cloud HQ,
cloud-based Zillow.
Yeah,
Cloud reported today. Cloud HQ. Zillow. We're not gonna. That is not gonna be AP style and GeekWire for the description. Okay,
that's fine.
Tried.
So that's what we do it internally.
Okay.
We call it Cloud HQ.
I don't know. I'm too old school. I don't think I can get there. But
fair enough.
Do you really want us to not refer to you as a Seattle-based company? Because that would be a bold statement to say here on the GeekWire podcast.
I mean, that's how we talk about it internally. We have centers of gravity where more of our employees live, but we have employees in all 50 states now. And more than half of our workforce lives more than 50 miles from what was some of our office footprints that we have kept, which we really use more for gathering spaces now. Like we have a very small set of employees that actually come in and do in-office, by themselves work every day. They mostly use our home office. Of course, we offer that. We have space for that. But once you move to the cloud and once you move to remote first, the way you solve the interactivity and the collaboration problem is you have scheduled and intentional gatherings much more often. And we put the letter Z in front of everything at Zillow, so we call them Z retreats. And so we have a whole cruise calendar of our retreats, and when different teams are getting together, we try and coordinate them so we can make best use. We just did a huge Hack Week, which is one of our largest Z retreats in Seattle. It's still our largest office footprint. And we had more than 1,000 people across product engineering design all come together, and we built a whole bunch of programming around it. So I tell all that to say we are moving forward and have committed to this strategy because it works, and it's opened up problems to solve for us, right? How do you solve you don't have the shoulder to shoulder osmosis every day? But those are problems you can solve, especially if you're clear-eyed on what your strategy is. And we are really clear-eyed that Cloud HQ for us is a huge advantage. We love it, and it is working really well for us.
So do you see any changes in strategy as it relates to the workforce with you coming and taking the reins as CEO?
No, I don't, honestly. I mean, I think it goes back to what Rich said earlier. When you're careful and planful in your transition, and you're building both the strategy, then the team, and then the organization around that, when you make the transition, that's just a mile marker on the journey. That's just a guidepost on the road that we're accelerating down. So there doesn't need to be an exit that you take or a change in course or a replotting of the map, because this is about kind of accelerating what we're doing.
Rich, have you been surprised that more companies didn't stick with the remote first? Because you've seen Amazon with 3 days back in the office, Microsoft. A lot of companies have taken the opposite approach, and you really stayed firm to remote first. I'm curious how that's played out for you.
It's been such a blessing, John. We didn't have to deal with any of that 1 day in, 2 days in, 3 days in, hokey pokey back, come, go. So many other companies have been kind of fighting this quiet battle between management and employees to try to get people back in the office under the assumption that if they're not in the office, they're not working, which is a bad assumption. It is a bad assumption, and it's a paternalistic assumption. Anyway,
it's been a huge recruiting boon when everyone else decided to not commit to this. Not just recruiting against companies that might have a more stringent office policy, but it also opens us up to recruiting nationwide. And we're hiring talent all across the country and actually all across the world now, because you can be an employee at Zillow no matter where you live.
Yeah, we don't want to diss on Seattle at all. We love Seattle. It's our biggest footprint where people live. But it turns out that not everybody wanted to move to Seattle. It turns out. And so the talent pool, when you cast a wider net, guess what happens? You get more better fish.
It also turns out when people who do live in Seattle don't want to commute every day, and they can take that commute savings and turn it into productive savings and work-life savings.
Anyway, I used to evangelize this, as you know, John, because we chatted about it a lot. I used to evangelize what we were doing because I had to explain to people what we were doing, and we had to get our kind of recruiting marketing spiel down on this. And so early in the pandemic, I evangelized this a lot, and we called it Cloud HQ. And you chuckle at that, but that is exactly what we call it. I stopped a couple of years ago. I just stopped talking about it because I didn't want to convince anybody else to follow our lead. It is definitely a competitive advantage for us in recruiting and for pace of innovation. The company has done really, really well with this new culture. So I'm pleased.
Dateline the cloud. Z Cloud. I'm just playing brainstorming.
Throw a Z
here
in front of it and it'll get far internally.
Cloud HQ in Cloud City.
There you go. Okay. Well, we're running out of time here. And to be candid with you, we've got a long list. GeekWire editor Taylor Soper and John and I collaborated. We could have a 5-hour podcast based on the list that we came up with. But I wanted to ask you, Rich, this is a bit of a milestone for you. Could you spend a little bit of time in the remaining time we have left, just reflecting on your journey, what this means for you and Zillow Group today, and where you and the company are headed next?
Yeah, I mean, it's been quite a journey. It's almost 20 years, Todd. You know, that means GeekWire is, I don't know, how old are you guys?
13. Yeah.
13. All right. Yeah. It's been almost 20 years. We had this big dream to give power to the people in real estate, right? To help people unlock life's next chapter is what we say. It's a wonderful mission. It's an inspirational mission. It's one that everybody is kind of in touch with because moving is such an emotionally and financially fraught thing. And it still continues to be really far too difficult and stressful. I think in an early article you wrote, John, you said, what are the keys to success? And I said, find a big pond and put in the best fishermen in the boat you can, and everything else will work out. And despite the fact that we're a couple $2 billion in revenue and growing double digits and very profitable and growing our profits, we have literally just scratched the surface of the opportunity in this industry. We are low single-digit percent have low single-digit percent market share in the real estate transaction business. It's hard to believe that given how big, what a long shadow we cast and how big the Zillow brand is, how well known it is, but we have very, very lightly monetized this. And so what gets me fired up and gets me so excited for what Jeremy is going to lead is he gets to lead the company and the team on the period of time where the foundation has been set and now the scores can really change. Like the company can become a really big, meaningful, significant company from here and kind of ultimately fulfill the promise of its brand. We can actually grow to justify the shadow we cast, the shadow we cast. So I'm really excited. As I said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm kicking myself upstairs, which is great. My job will be to coach and to help Jeremy and to make sure I take care of the other boards and the many other things that I do and have always done. As you guys know, I've always had my finger in a lot of pies, and I'm able to do that. So I couldn't be happier for Jeremy. Lloyd and I couldn't be more confident in Jeremy's leadership and the whole of the leadership team. And I think we're pretty excited to see what the next chapter of Zillow holds.
Well, Rich Barton and Jeremy Wacksman, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Any thoughts?
Oh, it's always interesting talking to the Zillow folks. It's a rare consumer-oriented brand based in Seattle. Although,
not based in Seattle.
Well, based in the cloud, yeah. I'll never get over that. But the fact that they are, and I say consumer, but where you hear them really placing their big bets is on these tools that are being provided to the real estate professionals. And I think that's where they think they can make a lot of money. They've made a lot of acquisitions in that realm, have expanded their business there in a deep way. You know, the one thing I didn't get to ask him when he was saying, hey, we have this very small percentage of the real estate transaction. I mean, you know, Zillow made a massive bet to go get a big piece of that transaction with their iBuying initiatives,
right,
which they, you know, the market shifted. And Zillow, you know, to Rich Barton's credit, I think one thing he will go down as, he pulled out of that business quicker than anybody else and shut that business down when people were saying, wow, that was a big move. It shifted hundreds of employees out. You know, they had to lay off hundreds of employees to shift out of iBuying.
And for people who didn't follow this, Zillow and other companies actually bought houses and flipped them.
Right. So they were very much into the sales transaction, which they had always avoided up until that time. So it'll be interesting to see if they're going to get more revenue. My contention has always been with Zillow is that if the money in real estate largely is in that transaction and getting a percent of the fee that occurs on a transaction. And so it'll be interesting to see how they navigate that and where they play.
It's also fun just to always catch up with Rich. He's got the ability to communicate a vision, and I think that's a really interesting lesson for a lot of entrepreneurs out there. You not only have to have the vision, you have to have the ability to communicate it in a compelling way. And I know you've talked about his Bartonisms, but that's part of it. And that's obviously a lot of internal communication, but he's also very good at communicating where Zillow is headed externally. And in preparation for this, I listened to a talk by Jeremy Wacksman, and I think he's got a little bit of that. Perhaps not the same. There's only one Rich Barton.
That's right.
But he's certainly got the ability to get across what the company's doing and where it's headed.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Until next time, I'm Todd Bishop.
And I'm John Cook.
We'll be back soon with a new episode of the GeekWire podcast.